I'm Ben Kassman, and I just wanted to talk about some of the research that I did last summer. So I was doing accessibility research out at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, which is out in Rochester, New York. And we were using natural language processing and some machine learning techniques to create an Android app that allows hearing individuals to communicate with people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And the main issue, or the reason that we were creating that, is that a lot of times when you're trying to speak into your phone, you can use something like Siri or something like that to transcribe the text into, or transcribe your speech into text. But if you're deaf or hard of hearing and the speech engine makes a mistake, you can't necessarily tell that, so it leads to a lot of communication errors when you're using that kind of software. So what we were doing was using natural language processing techniques to predict errors and basically assign like a confidence score to each of the words of like how confident the system was that it was being transcribed and, correctly, and then kind of using markup to identify when a word had been transcribed incorrectly, or when, like, predicting when a word may have been transcribed incorrectly. So using that kind of thing to make this app more user-friendly for both people who are hearing or and people who are deaf or hard of hearing. So some really important stuff that I learned with that is like the importance of working with like people who are deaf or hard of hearing when you're making something like that. So about 75% of our research team was deaf. And then they had the hearing people on so that we could sit there and analyze audio tapes for, 4 weeks, just transcribing things and marking when it was actually wrong. But it was really important to have that feedback of like, this is useful, this is not useful, and like actually working with the people who would be using it the most, which is surprisingly uncommon in a lot of the research that we found that was done with this kind of stuff in the past. It was like, oh yeah, we didn't even have anybody who was deaf or hard of hearing on our research team, but like we thought that this would be best, so like we did that. And that ends up not being as useful. So I don't really have much else to say, but if you want to come talk to me about that or accessibility stuff in general, I'm always happy to talk about that kind of stuff. So yeah. Thanks.